Chosen ones, your painful betrayals are actually special signs from Him. There's a moment in every chosen one's life when the world seems to collapse inward. A moment when someone you trusted, someone you loved, someone you would have gone to war for turns their back on you, sometimes without warning, sometimes with a smile. And when it happens, when that knife goes in, it doesn't just cut the flesh of the moment, it slices through your past, your identity, your very sense of reality. You don't just ask, why did they do this? You ask, why would God allow this? And that question, that ache, is where your true spiritual journey begins. Because here's what no one tells you: painful betrayals are not just emotional experiences, they are divine messages. They are not signs of your weakness or evidence that you're unworthy. They are signals from Him, from the infinite, from the divine orchestration behind all things, that you are being moved, shifted, awakened. And not everyone is ready to hear this. But if you're still here, still breathing after being broken open, then you were meant to hear this now.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
There are no accidents in the lives of chosen ones. The betrayals you've experienced were not random. They were surgical. They were allowed not to destroy you, but to extract something hidden deep inside of you. A strength, a clarity, a higher frequency that can only be accessed when everything false is stripped away. And betrayal is the most efficient tool for that stripping. Because betrayal doesn't just hurt, it reveals. It shows you who's real. It shows you what you've been tolerating. It shows you how much of your worth you've given away, hoping to be loved in return. But more than that, betrayal is a mirror, a sacred mirror. It reflects back to you the parts of yourself that are still enslaved to illusion. Maybe you thought love meant loyalty, no matter the cost. Maybe you confused being needed with being valued. Maybe you were so afraid of being alone that you clung to people who were only meant to be a chapter, not the whole book. And when the betrayal came, it shattered that illusion, painfully, violently, but necessarily. You see, chosen ones don't get the luxury of comfort. We are not here for easy lives. We are here for elevated lives. And elevation always requires separation. But because most of us won't separate ourselves from what's familiar, God allows betrayal to do it for us. I'll think about that. The people who hurt you the most, the ones who left, lied, used you, abandoned you, they weren't just enemies. They were instruments. Instruments in the hands of a God who is less interested in your comfort and more committed to your calling. Let me ask you something. What if the betrayal was the breakthrough? What if the heartbreak was actually heaven cracking open your old self to make room for the divine version of you that's been buried under layers of fear and people-pleasing? What if Him, God Source, the Creator, wasn't punishing you but positioning you? That's the shift. That's the truth that changes everything. Because once you realize that betrayal is a sign, not a sentence, you begin to walk differently. Not as a victim, but as someone chosen for transformation. And here's the deeper layer. Betrayal activates the gift of divine discernment. You don't get this gift from books. You get it from being lied to, manipulated, gaslit, and left out in the cold. You get it from trusting the wrong people and watching your world unravel. And in that unraveling, something awakens. You start to see through things. You start to feel energy. You begin to recognize who's real and who's just performing. That's not paranoia. That's divine sight. That's spiritual X-ray vision. And it only gets activated through betrayal. But the world doesn't understand this. The world tells you to move on, to forgive and forget, to be the bigger person. And yes, forgiveness is powerful. But before forgiveness comes awareness, and awareness is painful, because it forces you to see that some of the people you love the most were never capable of loving you back. Not because you were unlovable, but because they were never meant to travel with you into your next chapter. Chosen ones are not meant to walk crowded paths. We are called into solitude, into sacred isolation, but not as punishment. It's in the silence that we hear Him, and betrayal is often the doorway into that silence. When everyone you thought would be there is gone, when the phone doesn't ring, when the room feels too quiet, that's when He speaks. That's when the real assignment begins. That's when you discover that your pain wasn't empty, it was encoded with purpose. So the next time you think back on that betrayal, I want you to ask yourself not why did they leave me, but what did their exit make space for in my life? Because every time someone walks away, something sacred is invited in. Every betrayal is a clearing, a sacred demolition. And what's being built in its place is not just a new version of you, it's the true version of you. This is why the chosen suffer more. We are not being punished, we are being shaped. And shaping hurts. It cuts. It breaks. But it also awakens. And once you awaken, you can never go back to sleep. You can never unsee the truth. You can never again give your energy to what doesn't honor who you are. That's the gift. That's the sign. That's the message hidden in your betrayal. You were never abandoned by Him. In fact, you were never more held than in those moments when everyone else left. Because He needed you to see that He was the source, not them. That your value is eternal. That your power is divine. And that your destiny is too great to be shared with those who were never meant to carry it with you. The silent code, why God speaks loudest through abandonment. There is a sacred language that cannot be spoken with words. It's not heard in sermons, not written in books, not passed down through tradition. It's a language only those who have been abandoned truly understand. A silent code, a divine whisper that echoes through the emptiness left behind when everyone you thought would stay walks away. When the crowd disappears, when even those you prayed for turn their backs, when the room of your life empties out and you stand there with nothing but the sound of your own breath, that's when He speaks. Not in thunder, not in fire, but in silence, in stillness, and in that stillness, something ancient and holy begins to stir within you. We often think God speaks through blessings, through answered prayers, through open doors. But the deepest revelations, the most life-altering instructions, the clearest messages, they come in the silence of abandonment. Why? Because when you are surrounded by noise, you learn to depend on the world. You measure your worth by attention, by approval, by validation. But when all of that disappears, when people stop calling, when the applause fades, when even your closest ones go silent, you are forced to listen to a frequency beyond the human. That's where the code is. That's where the truth lies. Chosen ones are often left by the very people they were sent to uplift. The irony is brutal. You pour into others. You show up when no one else does. You give when you have nothing left, and still they leave. Still, they forget. Still, they betray. But their walking away isn't always about you, it's about what God wants to reveal to you. Because as long as you are surrounded by voices, you can't hear the whisper of destiny. And make no mistake, God whispers to the chosen. He doesn't shout. He doesn't compete. He waits. He waits until the room is empty, until the distractions are gone, until your heart is cracked open and ready to finally receive what He's been trying to tell you all along. Let me ask you something. What if your abandonment wasn't a rejection, but a redirection? What if the silence wasn't absence, but alignment? Have you ever considered that the people who left had to leave, not because you weren't enough, but because their presence was preventing your upgrade? Sometimes we don't grow because we're too entangled, too emotionally invested in people who were only meant to be part of our becoming, not our becoming itself. And God, in His infinite wisdom, allows the separation not to shame us, but to shed us, to remove what was never meant to stay. In the silence of abandonment, you begin to see with different eyes. You start to recognize the patterns, the way you've overgiven, the way you've settled, the way you've ignored the red flags because your heart wanted so badly to believe in the good of others. But now, in the quiet, you can finally hear him. And when he speaks, he doesn't just comfort, he reveals. He pulls back the curtain. He shows you the truth that was always there, waiting for your soul to be ready. This is the code. When the world pulls away, it's often because God is pulling you closer. Not for punishment, but for purpose. Not for isolation, but for initiation. You are being initiated into the next level of your calling. And initiation always requires separation. Not everyone can go where you're going. Not everyone is equipped to carry the weight of your destiny. And so, yes, it hurts when they leave. But realize they're not just leaving you. They're making space for him to enter on a deeper level. The silence becomes sacred. The abandonment becomes instruction. Each unanswered text, each unopened door, each person who ghosted you, they become messengers. Not of failure, but of refinement. And slowly you stop seeing yourself as the one who was left behind. You start seeing yourself as the one who was set apart. Not everyone gets chosen. And of those who are chosen, not everyone hears the code. But when you do, when you finally understand that the silence is speaking louder than any voice ever, could you begin to walk differently. You walk with clarity, with depth, with divine direction. So here's the question. Can you sit long enough in the silence to hear what he's really saying? Can you stop reaching back to what abandoned you and instead reach inward to what's being activated inside you? Because the more you resist the silence, the longer you delay the assignment. But the moment you surrender, the moment you stop asking for the old thing to come back and start asking what the new thing is trying to reveal, everything changes. The silence becomes symphony. The abandonment becomes alignment. And you begin to see the betrayal, the loss, the loneliness not as wounds but as windows. He never truly left you. He was waiting for the noise to die down. And now that it has, he's ready to speak. Are you ready to listen? The sacred setup, how betrayals position you for supernatural authority. There's a hidden law in the spirit that most people never see until they've walked through fire. It's this: before you can be trusted with divine authority, you must first be broken by human betrayal. Not because God wants to see you suffer, but because the higher the calling, the deeper the cutting. And only those who have been pierced by the blade of betrayal can carry the weight of supernatural power with humility, compassion, and fierce clarity. You see, betrayal is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your elevation. It is the sacred setup, the divine positioning, the invisible hand of God moving pieces around your life to prepare you for something that cannot be explained, only embodied. When you are betrayed, something dies. That's why it feels like grief. It's not just the loss of a person, it's the loss of trust, the loss of innocence, the loss of who you thought you were in their eyes. But what most don't realize is this: what dies in betrayal is not your destiny, it's your dependency. It's the version of you that needed other people to affirm your value. It's the version of you that still believed loyalty meant permanence. And when that version dies, what rises is something unshakable, something unbothered by applause or silence, something that doesn't need anyone's permission to walk in power. That's where supernatural authority begins, not on stages, not in temples, but in the ashes of what you thought you couldn't live without, in the silence after the betrayal, in the space where everything you leaned on has collapsed. That emptiness becomes a throne, and the pain, it becomes a crown. You don't wear this crown on your head. You carry it in your energy, in your presence, in your eyes that have seen too much but still shine. That's authority, and the ones who carry it rarely speak of it because they don't have to. People feel it. Let me ask you something that might shake you a little. What if the betrayal wasn't meant to hurt you but to qualify you? What if it was the final test before the breakthrough? You've been praying for elevation, for clarity, for purpose. But did you expect it to come easy? Elevation demands separation. It demands purification. And betrayal is one of the most potent purifiers on earth. It strips away ego. It exposes illusion. It reveals every place where your identity was rooted in someone else's opinion. And once that's gone, all that remains is truth, the raw, holy truth of who you are and who you're becoming. Betrayal is the storm before the assignment. It's the gate you walk through before the mantle of authority is placed on your shoulders. Look at the stories of every chosen one in history, spiritual, prophetic, revolutionary. Every single one of them was betrayed, not once, repeatedly, by friends, by family, by those they helped. Why? Because betrayal is the divine filter that removes the unnecessary. It clears the path. It makes sure you don't carry people into your next level who were only meant for your last. And here's the strange part. The betrayal doesn't disqualify you, it anoints you. It marks the moment when you stop trying to be understood and start walking in understanding. It's the shift from external validation to internal sovereignty. People may not see it, but heaven does. And once you've passed through that fire, heaven backs you in a way that no human approval ever could. Doors open without explanation. Discernment sharpens. Your voice carries weight. Not because you're louder, but because you're aligned. This is the sacred setup. The betrayal was the divine surgery. And now that you're healed, not perfectly, but truthfully, you are ready to carry what others can't even comprehend. You're no longer moved by flattery. You're no longer shaken by rejection. You've been through too much. You've seen too much. And now you walk with a quiet authority that shifts atmospheres. You don't need to defend yourself anymore. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't even need to be understood. Because you know who you are. And more importantly, you know whose you are. So if you're still in the aftermath of betrayal, I want you to see it for what it really is, a spiritual graduation. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are not being abandoned. You are being assigned. And the authority you are stepping into is not for show, it's for service. You've been entrusted with insight, with empathy, with wisdom forged in fire. And now you are ready to carry that into the world, not to prove anything, but to become the proof that pain does not cancel purpose. The betrayal was the setup. The silence was the invitation. And now comes the anointing, crowned in the shadows, the final revelation of the chosen. There's a moment in every chosen one's life when they finally stop running, not from enemies, not even from pain, but from themselves, from the weight of who they really are. You see, we don't just fear failure, we fear greatness. We fear the responsibility that comes with power. We fear the light inside us that refuses to be dimmed. But eventually, after enough betrayal, after enough silence, after enough sacred breaking, something shifts. We stop bargaining with the past, we stop begging for understanding, and we start becoming, quietly, powerfully, in the shadows. That's where the crown is placed, not in the spotlight, but where no one is watching. Being chosen doesn't mean you're better than others. It means you've been entrusted with more. More pain, more vision, more spiritual weight, and with that comes more accountability. You're not allowed to live an ordinary life. You're not allowed to sleep on your purpose. You're not allowed to waste your gifts. Why? Because too much has been given to you in the dark. Too many nights you cried and still showed up. Too many times you were broken and still poured into others. That wasn't for nothing. That was the refining. That was the process that carved the throne inside your soul. You are crowned not by people, but by process. And that crown doesn't shimmer, it glows. It glows with the wisdom you earned through survival. It glows with the authority you carry without needing applause. It glows with vision, with clarity, with purpose. And now, you're not just a survivor of betrayal, you're a leader forged in fire. You don't need to tell anyone who you are. You embody it. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere. not because you try, but because you're aligned. But here's the deepest truth. The crown only fits when you embrace the shadows that shaped you. You cannot step fully into your destiny while still rejecting the parts of you that were formed in pain. That betrayal, it was holy. That abandonment, it was divine. That silence, it was sacred space. God didn't crown you in public because He wanted to see if you would still rise in private. And you did. Every time. Even when no one clapped. Even when no one believed in you. Even when you barely believed in yourself. Let me ask you something. Can you see how every wound was actually a weapon being forged? Can you see how every person who left made room for your expansion? Can you see how every closed door forced you to open the one within? That's the final revelation. You were never being punished. You were being prepared. Everything was intentional. Every betrayal was a message. Every loss was a clearing. Every delay was divine alignment. And now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back. Because now you know who you are. You are chosen. You are crowned. You are called. And though you were forged in shadows, your impact will be felt in the light. You didn't just survive betrayal, you transcended it. And now you walk not in bitterness but in blessing. You carry peace where others would carry pain. You carry authority where others would crave attention. You carry legacy where others chase validation. You are crowned in silence, anointed in solitude, revealed in divine timing. And the world has no idea what's coming. Because when a chosen one fully awakens, everything shifts, not just for them, but for everyone connected to them. You are the shift, you are the sign, you are the revelation. And your time is now.